Welcome back to the channel, and in this video I'm going to talk about the road trip we have just come back from in our Tesla Model 3. So I've got a 2024 Tesla Model 3 and we did a road trip to Scotland and back. We're down here in the southeast of England in Kent, and we went up to Glasgow and Edinburgh. I was going to film the whole journey, every single charging stop, but frankly, I forgot. But I am going to talk about the journey. One of the major complaints with EVs is that you can't do long distances without having to stop for charge. That's partially true, but it doesn't reflect the reality of electric car driving. Which is that really you don't have to stop for charge. What actually happens is whilst you're stopped for a break, you can charge. And so long as you time it correctly, generally you don't really have to think about charging. So for a lot of the journey, I didn't actually think about the percentage of the battery. The journey was about 1,200 miles all in, including driving around when we got there. It was hot, so we were running the air conditioning, so about 30 degrees most of the time outside. And to put it in perspective, the Airbnb where we stayed did say we could charge. Whilst it would have been possible in an emergency, they only had a 3-pin plug. I made a long series of videos 2 years ago when we went all around the country. We went to England, Wales and Scotland in my Fiat 500e, and that was an interesting journey because I kind of in my mind thought, well, an electric car, you're going to have to stop to charge. Why not break the journey up and kind of have each night to fully recharge, and then that would cut down the amount of time you spend waiting around. But the outcome of that journey was actually that really you're not actually waiting around very much, even if you do have to stop to charge, because you can coincide that with your natural loo breaks and coffee breaks and so on and so forth. The Tesla was really getting on for about double the range. Yeah, about double the range of the Fiat. It will do 300 miles, where in the same conditions where the Fiat will do about 150. I've since found that these sort of longer journeys are perfectly possible in the Tesla without any planning or problems. The downside I found, you actually drive and you get quite tired driving because you want to get to your destination as quickly as possible, so you minimise the amount of time you spend stopped, and that means you drive for quite long stretches. If I was to do this kind of journey again, which I probably will do going up to Scotland, I think I will stop for a proper, maybe even an overnight stay. So I'm not doing like 9, 10, 11 hours of constant driving. So why did we go to Scotland? We got tickets to see Oasis at Murrayfield. Unfortunately, if you try and stay in Edinburgh this time of year, it's August at the moment, the Edinburgh Festival, Fringe, Tattoo, all of that kind of stuff is going on. Hotels are very expensive and in high demand. So we thought it would be a good idea to stay in Glasgow instead, and that led us on to thinking about having a few days away. So really we had a 2-day break. So we drove to Glasgow and then to Edinburgh and then blah, blah, blah. So what I'm going to do is I've actually got a better route planner, and it logs average speed and how far you've been, etc., etc. So first day we did 494 miles. So we've done overall over Monday to Thursday, we did 1,245 miles in all. So I had the car on charge in the normal place in the car park near me, and obviously left with 99-100%. So we drove 175 miles, which was 3.5 hours, 3 hours 26 minutes, to Rugby. And Rugby is quite a nice service station. Service stations go. And by which time, after 3.5 hours of driving, we needed to stretch our legs and have, essentially breakfast. So we had left at 7:30 with a full charge. We did an average of 51 miles an hour. I was driving as fast as I could legally and safely and all of that. We did 4.9 miles per kilowatt hour nearly. And yeah, 10:56 we stopped at Rugby. And we had a 24-minute break there, which was enough time to go to the loo, grab a sandwich, eat that sandwich, and then get back into the car. And in that time, when we stopped, we were still on 34%, and we had to stop because we needed to go to the loo. And Rugby's quite a nice place to stop, lots of chargers, lots of, places to eat. So we actually unplugged at 93%. So we'd had an average charge of 84 kilowatts. And so yeah, basically a full charge there. So we then drove all the way up into the north of England. Another 3.5 hour journey, 3 hours and 34 minutes. We were driving and averaged 52 miles an hour, so very slightly faster, and actually the economy went up. We had 5.06 miles per kilowatt hour. I suspect it's slightly higher efficiency because we didn't preheat the battery for the next stop, which was at Tebay. Now, Tebay is a really very nice service station. It's more of a farm shop with a proper restaurant, and it's a great place to stop. Highly recommend it. Now, Tebay services on the southbound side does have Tesla chargers and their own charging. On the northbound side, it only has their own charging, which is perfectly fine. But what you'll tend to find with non-Tesla chargers is that you'll tend to find they're busier, and that's because people, when they stop at a Tesla charger, will get nagged by the Tesla app to move their car when it's got enough charge to complete their journey. So in a Tesla, if you really want to get somewhere very quickly, you'll set off, put your destination in, and if you don't quite have enough charge to make the journey, it will tell you to stop for like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. These very short stops just to get enough charge to kind of bridge you to get to the next stop or to get to your destination. So you'll find that Tesla chargers, even though they're very busy, generally tend to have free spaces because Tesla won't navigate you to a charger that it thinks is going to be full. So the non-Tesla chargers, even though they can be similar car, similar speeds, you'll often find that people just stop there and charge to 100%, which is very time inefficient. And also you'll find that people will stop there with colder batteries and all of that kind of stuff. So there were good charges on the northbound side, a good number rather, but they were full. So there was a queue of like one car. But I did notice there was another. I thought, well, I won't charge here, that's fine. But then I noticed there was another charger which was 50 kilowatt. So that's a much slower charger. That was free. So, as in free, as in there wasn't anyone charging there. So I pulled into that and plugged the car in. I started the charge with my Electrofirst card, which worked fine. No faffing around with that. Yeah, so at Rugby it was obviously a Tesla charger, but with a Tesla charger you just plug it in. At Tebay you plug in and tap your card. And we actually had basically our dinner there. We had a full-blown meal and drinks, and we stopped for an hour basically. 55 minutes of charging. So this is a slower charger than what the car can do. We averaged 42 kilowatt, which is the maximum the charger could put out. But that still gave us again nearly a full charge. We actually unplugged at 94%. So again, we had nearly a full charge, which meant that when we arrived in Glasgow, after 3.25 hours of driving, averaging a slower 41 miles an hour, we arrived in Glasgow at 7:07, and we still had 46% battery. And I didn't use the Tesla route planning. So you can go in, as I say on a Tesla, you can go in, you can just put in your destination, and you can say, okay, I'm going to X place, and it'll go, well, you've got so much charge now, and you can tell it how much charge you want to have when you arrive, and it will tell you just to bridge that gap. And this, by the way, is the biggest misconception people have with EVs, because people say, oh, your car's got, say my car's got, Tesla's got 300-mile range. They'll say, well, it can only do 300 miles, so it doesn't really work like that. If you're going 600 miles away, you only have to add 100% charge. You're not, because you can set off with a full charge, you can arrive empty. You can't really do that with a combustion car because you don't live at a petrol station and you're not driving to a petrol station. So if you've got charging where you're going and charging where you set off from, you're going to have to fill in that gap. So if you've got a car with a 300-mile range and you're going somewhere 400 miles away, you don't have to charge it up to full in the middle. You just have to add it in that extra 100 miles of range. So the Tesla's got that planning system, but we choose not to use it because we're kind of, when we've got 5 people in the car, I'm thinking about, are they hungry? Do they need to stretch their legs? Blah, blah, blah. Is this a nice place to stop? Does it have nice food? All of that kind of stuff. So I wasn't using their planning system. I was thinking about where I need to stop, where I'd like to stop, and then fitting the charging in around that. So we definitely could have done it with fewer stops. I reckon we could have done it with about half an hour of charging rather than an hour and 20 minutes. So we could have knocked nearly an hour off the journey time, because it took 10 hours and 14 minutes in all. I reckon we could have got that down to about 9 hours, which is, is good going on that run. We could have knocked it down with just stopping where Tesla told us to stop. Or perhaps there would have been an even more optimised way of doing it, but we were more focused, instead of on rushing to get to Glasgow, thinking about how we can make the journey quite pleasant. So anyway, yeah, and obviously it was an inefficient use of charging, because we still had 46% when we arrived. If we'd arrived with 4%, then we could have knocked off a lot of charging time. But as I say, we were charging while stopped and not the other way around. So that meant that on Tuesday, we were in a good position to start the day. So we started the day at 46%, and my wife went out and got a coffee, which was down the road. So she got back to the house at 45%. And then we preconditioned the car. We were going to go out to the Borough Collection, which is an art gallery in Glasgow. And I did think, oh, can we charge at the Borough Collection? But I had a little look on the charging apps, and there wasn't any charging there. So I thought, well, let's not bother. But we got 45% still. Preconditioned the car, 44%. Used a percent. It was really hot, cooling the car down. I drove down to the Borough Collection, went into the car park, and there was a sea of chargers, absolutely loads of chargers. I can't remember how many there were, but like there was nobody charging, and there was loads of chargers. Admittedly only 7 kilowatt, but there were loads. Turns out they're in the wrong place on the map. If you look now, you'll see they're in the right place, because I wrote to them and got it changed. So we arrived at the Borough Collection with 43%. So we only actually used 1% getting there, which seems unbelievable, but it is true, because it was downhill. And we were at the Borough Collection for 2 hours and 50 minutes. This is a 7 kilowatt charging. With charging losses, it charges at 6 kilowatt. So I go from 43% to 75%. So I went round an art gallery, had some lunch at the art gallery, went to the playground, went on the swings. The kids, not me. 75%. So we get back, drive back up the hill, get there back to the Airbnb with 71%, which is still pretty good, isn't it? That's still over 2/3 of a battery. It's all going very well, really, isn't it? So the next thing to do is we've got to go over to Edinburgh, to Murrayfield, and don't hate me for this, but we parked actually on the street. It was very expensive. Probably should have used the park and ride, but that was full. Blah blah blah. Don't know the area very well. Never lived in Edinburgh, all that kind of stuff. But so we drove. Anyway, we drove there. Again, we averaged nearly 5 miles per kilowatt hour. Set off with 70%. Arrived with 50% in Edinburgh. So still got half a charge. Went to the gig. There was, unfortunately, this is a really negative point for Scotland. No on-street charging, because we could have probably charged up if there had been. Nothing around, so we just the battery went down rather than going up whilst charged. And so we had Sentry mode on, preconditioned the cabin. When we got back in, it was a hot night, so we left Edinburgh with 47%. Drove for 51 miles, an hour and a half down the M8. And the reason it took a long time, we stopped actually at Tesco. Got 5.3 miles per kilowatt hour still. Arrived back in Glasgow with 30%. So that was a day where we'd gone to lots of places, and I hadn't thought about charging. I just happened to plug in. By the way, at the Borough Collection, plugged the car in, tapped my Electroverse card again. Didn't have to use any apps. It just started charging. So yeah, whole day without thinking about charging, but we started the day off at 46% and we ended with 30%, so we're only down 16%. despite driving around all day, driving between cities, preconditioning, all of that kind of stuff. So, how easy is that? And as I say, there could have been a charger in Edinburgh, it could have been better than this. Went and got a coffee, 28%. It started our day. We're going to go up to Coat Bridge in Glasgow to a museum. It's called Summerlee Museum. It's an industrial museum. I thought they might be charging there. Well, I didn't really think they would be because it wasn't on the map, but you never know. So we drove up to Coat Bridge, which was a 43-minute drive, 17 miles, 4.46 miles per kilowatt hour, and it was very hot. Got there with 21%. And in a Tesla, it keeps the cabin cool when you're parked up. So we used 1%. Again, we drove back into Glasgow, and we got the subway from which is Glasgow Underground. Very interesting if you've never been on it. We got the Glasgow subway from Kelvin Bridge into town. So we drove into town. By the time we parked up, we now only had 13% battery. An hour's drive, very hot weather, we only got 3.9 miles per kilowatt hour. So, we'd had lunch in Glasgow, got the subway back, and we thought, right, we're going to the museum now. So by the time we got in the car, we only had 12% now. Getting worrying, isn't it, this? So we only got 12%. So we drive to the Riverside Museum, and we look around the Riverside Museum. So we got there at about 4 o'clock, and it closed at 5. So we had about an hour there. Now at the Riverside Museum, they had rapid chargers. So they have 50 kilowatt. So plugged in, again, we only got 43 kilowatts after charging losses, etc. Now it's charging. Left the Riverside Museum still with 88%. So again, basically got back up to a full battery now. We could have probably stayed on charge for another 15 minutes or something and had a full charge, but we just wanted to get off and get on with what we need to do. Got back to the Airbnb with 81%. I went out and got a curry. Picked that up, got back to the Airbnb with 80%. So that's the end of that day. We're coming back down to Kent the next day. It's Thursday, so I got 80%. So we precondition the car. It's 7 in the morning, 9 o'clock precondition the car. We leave with 79%. Now, we wanted to go to Holy Island, which had been to 2 years ago, but my dad wasn't with us 2 years ago, and he wanted to look around the Lutchins Castle on Lindisfarne, Holy Island. So he said, "Oh, can we go that way?" So it's quite a long way back. It's 540 miles. So I added really getting on for 50, 60 miles extra to the journey. So instead of going straight back down into England, we went across to Edinburgh, round the coast, and down into England. As I say, we left at 9 o'clock with 79%. We got to Lindisfarne after 3 hours of driving, pretty much exactly, and they have chargers. Admittedly, they're only AC chargers, so we're limited to 10, 11 kilowatts speed. That's as fast as the onboard charger in the car will charge. But we charged there for 1 hour and 38 minutes whilst we looked around the castle. And that took the charge from 33% back up to 60%. So, leaving, again, with higher state of charge. At this point, we haven't stopped to charge yet. We haven't stopped to charge at all. And my wife then looked at the sat-nav and said, "I want to stop." I said, "Why should we stop? We need to stop." So she said, "I want to stop at Ferrybridge services. Got loads of GridServe and loads of Tesla. Really good place to stop." She said, "I want to stop there because they got a Pret. I fancy a Pret." So I was like, "Okay, we'll stop at Ferrybridge." Typed in Ferrybridge into the sat-nav and it said we'll get there with minus 8%. Which is obviously not very good because that's 8% less than what we need to get there. So I said, "Are you sure you want to go?" Yeah. I said, "Well, I'll make the car get there." So with the Tesla, you can drive slower and get to your destination with more percent. So I just drove a little bit slower, and gradually that went from 8 to 7 to 6 to 5 for me, and went down to 0. And then we hit traffic, and it was terrifying because, like, when it says like 20 minutes of driving left and you're on like 2%, you think this is not going to work. And that is my first experience of any sort of range anxiety in the car. It's not really the fault of the car, it's more the fault of the navigation, that we wanted to go somewhere that was really too far away. But it was fine actually, because I got there with 1% through the traffic jams and everything. It was, so really that was a bit stupid, because actually if I'd just gone a bit faster and stopped earlier, then it probably would have made the journey quicker overall. And it was a long time in the car. We were in the car for 3 hours and 25 minutes from Holy Island to Ferrybridge. That's too long in my opinion to go without a break. So anyway, stopped at Ferrybridge, and the data's a little bit funny here because there was some sort of weird signal issue at Ferrybridge, because it said the charges were all full. They weren't, as in a phone signal issue. The car couldn't talk to Tesla, whatever. There was some, I don't know quite what the issue was, but I think we unplugged at 95%. And what was interesting here, by the way, is we plugged in 1% and it said to go to 100%, it's going to take 45 minutes. So really that means that even in the worst case scenario, admittedly it was warm in summer, but I hadn't preconditioned the battery because that would have taken extra power. So I didn't precondition the battery. The battery was just there as it was. It was a warm day, but it wasn't preconditioned. We arrived 45 minutes is the kind of like the worst case scenario of charging, because that was literally, I think it's actually under 1%. It was more like 0.5%, all the way up to 100. They reckon 45 minutes. We didn't stop for 45 minutes. I think we stopped for more like 35, 40 minutes. And we left with, I think, about 95%. But that data point is missing. And that got us for Stansted, Birchenhanger green Tesla. So we drove for 2.5 hours, and we still had a third of a battery left. At which point everyone really needed to stop again, because I think we'd overdone it on the last stretch. People really, really did want to stop. So it was, 2.5 hours, 2 hours 37 minutes of driving. We stopped at Birchenhanger Green for just 21 minutes. We got all the way back up to 85%. Again, that was just the time we were stopped. Same thing at Ferrybridge. We stopped for 40 minutes because we wanted to stop for 40 minutes. By the time everyone had something to eat and stretched their legs and gone to the loo, it was 40-ish minutes. Birchenhanger Green, it was 21 minutes. And then we drove for 1 hour 50 back to Kent, and we arrived back home with 46% still. So, if you think about all of those charges, 1,200 miles of driving, did I have to stop to charge? Well, yes, I had to charge the car, and the only time when really I did have to stop was Ferrybridge, but we should have actually stopped earlier. At no point did we really beat the car. Did I have to think about charging? Well, I certainly did on the way to Ferrybridge, because I had to slow the journey down to get to the charger on time. This is a standard range Tesla. They do a long range version of it. I could have further I could have optimized the charging points to get there as soon as possible if I was in a hurry. It wasn't particularly pleasant driving like this. It was too fast. We were all kind of cramped in the car. We should have stopped more often. Really, honestly, what is the problem with that? Did I have to faff around with apps to start my charge? No. I just tapped my Electroverse card or plugged the car into the Tesla. Did I have to plan my route? No, I just used the sat-nav and stopped at a nice service station. The only thing I thought about was, is this service station nice and does it have chargers that are good? What is the issue? What is the issue with that? Was I worried about the range? Was I worried about the percentage? Only at one point, and that was really self-inflicted. Did I have to queue to charge? No, I could have done at Tebay, but I managed to find the charger without queuing. That's a pretty extreme journey, and the car was totally fine. And it was easier than a petrol car, because in a petrol car, I would have gone out the night before, leaving Kent, filled up, 500 miles. Would I have done that on a tank of petrol? Yeah, in a good modern petrol or diesel, yeah, I've had cars come into my workshop with like 600 miles range, so yeah, I would have done that. But then the next day, I would have thought, oh, I better get some petrol. Now, I'm sure you're at this point, oh, well, you can refuel your car at a service station, which is true, but it's not the same experience as as recharging your car, because when you stop at a service station, recharging your car is so easy because you just park up at the charger, plug your car in, and walk into the service station, do what you need to do in there, walk back to the car, unplug it, and drive off. When you need to refuel with petrol, you park up, walk into the service station, do what you need to do, come out, get back in the car, drive to the pump, get out the car, put the nozzle in the car, stand there for a couple of minutes, then go into the shop, queue up, pay, come back into your car and drive off. It's much easier just to plug your car in. It's a much simpler, more convenient thing. So yes, okay, I could have fueled up my petrol car at a service station, but it would have added time to the journey. Or I could have fueled up my destination, which would have added time to my journey. And then I probably would have had to then stop on the way back to refuel, which would have added on time to my journey. And then I would have had to refuel when I got back, which would have added time into my life. So I would have had time before setting off, time when getting back, time on the road or at my destination, probably twice. It's more convenient when the charging infrastructure is good to have an electric car, but it is reliant on the charging infrastructure. In Glasgow and Edinburgh, it was flaky. There were no chargers at Coat Bridge. The Burrell collection chargers were put in the wrong place, and in Edinburgh there's no on-street charging like there is in London and Portsmouth. If there'd been on-street charging in Edinburgh, it would have helped out a little bit. The knock-on effect, if there'd been on-street charging in Edinburgh, the knock-on effect would have probably meant that I got to Ferrybridge a little bit sooner. That's the thing with electric cars. They're all very well if the infrastructure is there and it works and it's easy to use. In England, in the southeast of England, it really is all there and it's very good and it's super convenient. In Scotland, they sort of are trying, but it's very disjointed. There are on-street chargers in Glasgow, but they're for car club use only. I don't quite know what that means, and I couldn't see any in Edinburgh. It's more than technically possible for there to be a charger wherever you stop. If there'd been one on the street in Glasgow when we went on the subway, there could have easily have been one there. In London, it's almost now wherever you stop there's a charger on the street. I've rambled on far too long. Thanks for watching. If you feel like it, you can watch another video. Thanks again.